Welcome to the P.A.S. Report podcast. If you're tired of censorship, outraged by government abuses, and thirsty for real insights, then you're in the right place. Get ready, because here, the fight for freedom never ends. Here's your host, Professor Nick Giordano.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the P.A.S. Report podcast. This is your host, Professor Nick Giordano. I'm glad you could join me today. Now, make sure that you follow and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. Also, visit the P.A.S. Report website, pasreport.com. There, you can sign up for the newsletter, read the show notes, check out the sources. Also, be sure to share this episode with family and friends. Now, I have a great episode lined up for today. But before I get to the heart of the episode, there's a few announcements that I want to make because I'm switching things up here at the P.A.S. Report. Normally, the interview episodes go out on Mondays and the monologue episodes go out on Wednesdays. That is going to change going forward. So the monologue episodes will now go out on Mondays and prepare you for the week, and the interview episodes are going to go out on Wednesdays. This is going to work better because it sets up the week for what to look forward to, what to look for in the political environment. Also, I'm very excited to announce the launch of the America's Founding series, which will begin this Thursday. Each week on Thursdays, I'm going to do a release of a quick 15-minute episode that takes you through the principles and the people and events that shaped America. This isn't the watered-down revisionist history that you get in schools today. This is the real story of our nation's founding, told in a way that's going to be engaging, informative, and relevant to today. Because in this series, we'll explore many of the forgotten figures that played a role, great American patriots that helped forge the greatest country in the history of the world. The reason that I feel this series is so important is because it restores the true history of our nation's founding. And it's free from the ideological agendas. It reconnects Americans with the principles that made us such an exceptional nation. And we have to give credit to the forgotten patriots and their ideas that helped shape America, but they're rarely talked about. So I think this is important. Spread the word. Share America's Founding series with your family, your friends, your children. You can listen to it with them to give them an idea about what this country is all about, the values of the American identity. So the first episode is going to drop this Thursday. Make sure that you're subscribed and ready for it. And again, it is so important because too many of us have either never learned history or we've forgotten the founding of this country. And we need to reignite the essence of America, the spirit of our founding fathers. We need to start learning about what the intent of the system is. And I think that's really important. So I hope you'll join me on this Thursday. Now, moving on to this week's episode, I think it's really important. I want to focus on how some on the left are totally unhinged. They're out of control. And we're now seeing a very dangerous situation where they're resorting to increasingly extreme tactics to silence and intimidate their opponents. And one of the most alarming trends we're seeing is the rise of swatting. For those of you who may not know what swatting is, it's a deliberate malicious act where someone reports, they call the cops and they report a threat at an individual's home in an attempt to provoke an armed police response. This isn't harassment. It goes well beyond that. It's an attempted assassination by cop. And if this continues, sooner or later, someone is going to get seriously injured or killed. Someone will call into the police. They're going to claim a mass casualty incident, that someone is inside the home killing people, and the whole intention is for police to storm that person's home. At the same time, it's not just the swatting that we're witnessing. We're also witnessing coordinated attacks on Tesla facilities and Tesla drivers throughout the country, all because the left is unhappy with Elon Musk and his efforts to root out waste, fraud, and abuse within our government. That he had the audacity to support Orange Man, because remember, Trump is bad. Orange Man bad about everything he does. And these are the same people that actually used to celebrate Musk. But since he has bought Twitter, turned it into X, because he's now a Trump supporter, he is persona non grata in leftist circles. The same people who claim that they want to fight fascism embrace violent authoritarian tactics to push back, intimidate, and silence those who they disagree with, silence those who challenge left-wing orthodoxy or the status quo. They claim it's all about protecting democracy, but it's not. They claim it's about pushing back against fascism, but they themselves are the fascists. Anyone that aligns themselves with President Trump, it's open season on them. They want to instill fear and eliminate freedom of thought. They want to force ideological conformity through intimidation. And that's what it's all about. They'll say that, no, it's just protest and resistance, but this goes well beyond that. And today I'm going to break down these developments. I'm going to expose the hypocrisy, and I'm going to explain why we must demand accountability. There can be zero tolerance for this, because if we don't, things will spiral out of control and someone's going to get hurt. So let's talk about the swatting that's going on throughout the country, because it isn't happening at random. This is part of a deliberate campaign to intimidate and silence conservative voices and Republican voices. Every single person who has been targeted by these swatting tactics has been a Republican, a conservative, or someone who has either expressed support for President Trump or refused to bow to the leftist mob. And you could see this is a clear pattern by looking at those who have been targeted. You have radio talk show host Joe Pags, swatted. InfoWars host Chase Geiser, swatted. Independent journalist Nick Giordano, swatted. Ex-influencers like Cathard and Gunther Eagleman, swatted. And even our friend from the loud majority, Sean Farish, the master of Trump impressions, it's amazing what he could do, he was swatted as well. The list keeps growing. And notice that not a single Democrat or leftist commentator has been targeted. That's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence at all, because let's be clear. This isn't a joke. Swatting isn't a prank. It's designed to put lives at risk by tricking law enforcement into responding to fake emergencies with their guns drawn. If police believe people are being murdered, they're going to take up tactical positions and attempt to storm the home. Now, notice, when these swatting attacks happen, always in the dead of night, it's around 2 or 3 in the morning that the calls will come in. That's not a coincidence. They do this because they want the target to be caught off guard. They want the target to be groggy. I mean, think about when you first wake up, how disoriented you are. Now, when a team of armed officers suddenly storms your home, think of the increased risk in a tragic outcome. Imagine your door gets kicked in, you're jolted awake, it's smashed, officers yelling commands, you have no idea what's going on. You don't even know if it's the cops, you have no idea. Your family members don't know, you may have little kids in the home, and it's so early in the morning, your instinct is to react. You may grab a firearm thinking that it's intruders coming into your home. You may not be able to clearly hear the officer's commands because you just woke up. But any sudden move can be interpreted by the police as a threat. And that's the whole point. They want law enforcement to make a split-second decision that ends in disaster. And that's why it's not just harassment. It's an attempted execution by cop. We have to speak about that because the goal is simple. Create a situation where someone gets seriously injured or killed. And I really want you to get an idea about how those on the left think. So when Nick Giordano announced that his father's home was swatted, and he stated that his father could have been killed, you have a leftist that replied to him on X. So if your dad had died because of you, you wouldn't have taken any responsibility? You're asking for illegals to have their doors kicked in when that friendly fire also happens to Americans who look like you. You're not a victim. You are the reason. Stop playing victim. End quote. That's what a leftist said. This is the logic of these sick and demented people that exist out there. Can you imagine sitting at home with your family, your kids may be asleep, and suddenly a SWAT team storms your house, rifles drawn, because some deranged activist made a false report? And that's the reality for these people. This is political violence. And it's only a matter of time before it leads to someone getting killed, whether it's a police officer or whether it's an innocent civilian. It is disgraceful. It is shameful. And I don't hear Democrats and the left speaking out forcefully against it. Many are just completely ignoring it. At what point are they going to take notice? At what point are they going to say to their followers, knock it off? This is going too far. And while swatting is certainly the most dangerous of these tactics, leftists are also engaged in other forms of harassment. One of the more juvenile things they're doing, it's still damaging, but they're sending random pizza deliveries to people who express support for Trump and the Trump administration, who express support for conservative politics. They think this is some sort of troll. The left is mad because of the right's own the libs. So they feel that this is a troll move to own the Republicans, to own conservatives. It's not. It's actually just annoying because they're not just wasting the time of the person they're targeting. They're also hurting small business owners. Think about it. You have a local pizza shop getting a call for an order of multiple pies. They make them, they use their ingredients, pay their employees, send out a driver using gas, only to find out it was a joke. It was a fake order. And so how much money are these small business owners losing? Small business owners who are already struggling to stay afloat. They have zero regard for these small businesses. And it's ironic because they claim to care about the little guy. But their actions show the truth. They only care about power, control, and silencing their opponents. That's what they care about. They believe that they are the moral holy warriors of the 21st century and that their actions are completely justified because apparently anyone who doesn't think like these lunatics, anyone who doesn't think like them is subhuman. And it points to a bigger issue. There are a lot of people on the left who aren't interested in debate or discussion. They're not interested in a marketplace of ideas. Instead, they want to instill fear. They don't want debates. They want to use these harassment tactics to make people afraid to speak out. That's what it's designed to do. But they're not going to win. They're the ones that are showing their true colors. And they reveal their hypocrisy as they are the ones that resort to fascist tactics as they claim to fight fascism. Thankfully, none of these swatting incidents have ended in tragedy, at least not yet. But we are beginning to see political violence in the name of resistance continue. They're increasing. We're continuing to see an increase of this violence. It's happening with the swatting incidents, but it's also happening with coordinated attacks on Tesla facilities and Tesla drivers. It's all part of the same playbook. It's part of the same plan. The whole Saul Alinsky rules for radicals. And if that wasn't enough, we're also seeing coordinated wave of attacks on Tesla facilities and even individual Tesla drivers. Again, this isn't just about vandalism. It falls into political violence, and it even pushes the boundaries of terrorism. Now, terrorism has been butchered over the course of the last decade. It's so overused at this point and throughout the years. But we have to look at what constitutes terrorism before the definition actually got butchered. And it's the intentional targeting of innocent civilians and property as a way to instill fear and force governments, intimidate governments, pressure governments to change its policies. That's the very basic definition of terrorism. And isn't that exactly what the intent is here? Punish Elon Musk all because he supported Trump, and now because he's heading up the Doge effort to cut the government. It's a form of intimidation. And it's not just about Elon Musk, who I will remind everyone was celebrated by the left for years before he purchased Twitter and threw support behind Donald Trump. For years, they praised this guy. But we're talking about really, really dangerous stuff here. Smashing windows in dealerships, throwing Molotov cocktails, arson, even shootings at Tesla dealerships across the country. Now, while these attacks tend to happen when the dealerships are closed overnight, let's ask the obvious, what happens if someone is inside? What happens if you have a custodial worker that's cleaning up at night or a salesperson working late? They're trying to finish paperwork or security guard on duty. These are real people. These are working class Americans that you're putting their lives in danger. They're just doing their jobs. They're not ideological. They're not there because they're conservative. They're not there because they're progressive. Yet their lives are being put in danger because a group of extremists are such losers that they can't stand the thought of Elon Musk. They can't stand the idea of free speech. And I want to make it clear how it goes beyond Elon Musk. It's about intimidating ordinary Americans because it's not just Tesla facilities that are being targeted. Ordinary people driving Teslas are being harassed and attacked. And you have Tesla owners that have reported their cars being keyed, tires are being slashed, attempts to run them off the road simply because of the car they drive. That's completely insane. This is not the America that I grew up in. And it's designed to do three things. Three things. I mean, it's obviously designed to drive people away from Tesla. And no pun intended in that, but it's designed to inflict financial pain on the company, put them out of business for political purposes. Secondly, it's designed to generate backlash amongst Tesla owners, to get Tesla owners to speak out against Musk. But lastly, it's meant to instill fear in the population. If you're driving a Tesla, you are a target. And if you don't drive one, you better not consider purchasing one because you will become a target. And the irony, I mean, you can never talk about the irony so much when it comes to the left. Because who really drives Teslas? I mean, think about who most Tesla owners are. Do you think most Tesla owners are hardcore conservatives? Or do you think they lean left to the political spectrum? I mean, the biggest markets for Teslas are New York, California, and other deep blue states. These aren't MAGA diehards. They're not hardcore conservatives. In fact, many of them identify as progressives. They're the very people leftists claim to represent. That's the amazing part. But the leftists don't care. The truth is that the radical left doesn't care at all. They are so consumed by their ideological war. They are so consumed by hatred that they are now targeting their own. They see ordinary people who probably voted for Kamala Harris and Democrats as Tesla drivers. They see them as acceptable casualties of their war, because casualties of war, well, it's all about the ends justify the means. If you're not going to conform to their narrow-minded ideological viewpoints, well, it's open season on just about everyone. It's pure fanaticism. That's what we're witnessing. And some even say it's very fascistic, right? This is the new left. And this is the difference between Republicans, conservatives, and leftist ideologues. When President Obama was in office for 8 years, and you had President Biden, we just had to endure 4 years of the Biden administration, not that he was in charge, but we had to endure 4 years of him. We didn't see attacks like this. We didn't see Republicans and conservatives organizing and engaged in this kind of behavior. And that shows you a major difference. No matter how much people disagreed with Obama or Biden, no matter how much people disliked them, we never saw conservatives firebombing leftist businesses. We never saw coordinated attacks on progressive brands like Ben & Jerry's or Starbucks. Even when conservative businesses like Hobby Lobby and Chick-fil-A were attacked in the press, the right didn't respond with violence. And I want to make it clear, I'm not lumping in Democrats with this radical leftist group that exists. Ordinary Democrats aren't radicalized. They don't engage in this level of violence. I need to make that clear. But there is a small segment on the left that embraces this type of mob rule. It's almost reminiscent of Bill Ayers, the Weather Underground in the 1970s. They embrace anarchy and chaos, and that's where it falls into Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals. They use fear. They use destruction and intimidation as political weapons so that they could get their way. And when they can't win the debate, they're going to resort to violence. Unfortunately, you have an ideologically corrupt media that is now attempting to downplay or outright ignore these incidents. They call these incidents a form of protest. They call it part of the resistance to fascism. And that's sick and demented in and of itself. They can't even bring themselves to condemn the violence. And that's where Democrats need to step up their game. Because just imagine for a second, the roles were reversed. Imagine if Trump supporters were firebombing businesses because they didn't like a CEO's politics. The outrage would be deafening. And how do I know this? I know this because think about what happened under the Biden administration. There were calls for parents to be investigated under the Patriot Act because they dared to raise their voices at school board meetings, because they dared to raise their concerns about what their children were learning in the classroom. And you have the administration that wanted to target them as if they were domestic terrorists. You had traditional Catholics labeled as possible domestic violent extremists, all because their stances on issues like abortion and gender. Some in the FBI even wanted to infiltrate churches to recruit informants. But when leftists are actually engaging in real violence, when they're actually attacking facilities, when they're attacking people, all you hear is crickets. This is the world we now live in. Swatting, physical intimidation, they're being normalized by the left as acceptable forms of political activism, as resistance. See, as long as the moral holy warriors deem that they're right, that they believe they have the right political positions, that it's in the interest of justice, that's what they truly believe. And the left, they don't want debate. They don't want discussions. They want obedience, and they'll use any means necessary to get it. So I want to make it clear, this isn't just about swatting or Tesla attacks. This is about something much bigger. It's a dangerous shift toward political intimidation within our country. It's a dangerous shift towards authoritarian control that has worsened throughout the last couple of decades. And the radical left, they have become unhinged. They don't want to win arguments through discourse. They don't care about facts, logic, or reason. They want obedience. And if you don't comply with their narrow-minded points of view, they will try to destroy you. They will try to destroy you personally. They will try to destroy you financially and even physically, if necessary, as we're witnessing right now. We've seen this playbook: swatting, arson, harassment, intimidation. These are the tactics that totalitarian regimes use. They want to make people afraid to speak out. They want to make people afraid to challenge the narrative, afraid to even associate with who they deem the wrong people. And what makes this even more infuriating is that many of them are the same people who constantly cry about democracy, that democracy is under attack. The same people who claim to be fighting fascism. And they're the ones acting like fascists. They're the ones using fascist tactics. They accuse the right of being violent, but they're the ones committing violent acts, not the right, not conservatives, not Republicans. And they say they're doing it in support of democratic principles. Yet they try and silence and intimidate anyone who disagrees with them, because to them, democracy doesn't mean freedom. To them, democracy means obedience and compliance. And when you obey and comply, then you could exercise the freedoms that they allow you. Sounds a lot like Marxism, doesn't it? See, they pretend to be the champions of the little people, the ordinary people out there. Yet they don't care when their harassment tactics hurt small business owners. They don't care about hurting ordinary people. If a group of conservatives was engaging in these types of violent attacks, the media would be going wall to wall with coverage 24/7. You'd have the Department of Justice immediately involved. There would be congressional hearings nonstop. There would be outrage from political pundits across the political spectrum, demands for action and accountability. But because it's leftist activists doing the damage, it's being ignored. And in some corners, it's actually being celebrated as a form of resistance. You have too many Democrats that are pretending this isn't happening. And again, I separate out Democrats from the radical leftists. The Democrats are not engaging in the violence, but they're not speaking up forcefully enough to condemn the violence that we're witnessing. And if this isn't stopped, if this continues to escalate, what happens when someone dies because of a swatting attack? What happens when a Tesla dealership is firebombed and it results in someone being killed? What happens when someone driving a Tesla gets pulled out of their car and beaten because of the car they drive? Or what happens when they're forced off the road, violently forced off the road, causing an accident, maybe killing the driver and other people? What happens then? The more this continues, the more it's tolerated, the more these incidents are going to increase. This is the natural progression of the leftist movement that doesn't believe in rules. They don't believe in fairness. They don't believe in freedom of thought. They don't believe in freedom of speech. They don't believe in the inherent right of liberty. The only thing they believe in is their power, their voices. The left, they've proved who they are. They are not the anti-fascists that they claim to be. They are not the defenders of democracy. They are the real authoritarians. And if we allow this intimidation to go unchecked, it will never stop. It will only worsen. And if they succeed, do you really think that they're going to stop there once they succeed? No. They're going to come for anyone who doesn't comply 100% with their radical ideology, including their own. So the best way to fight back is to shine a light on it, expose it, call it out for what it is, demand accountability, demand zero tolerance, refuse to be intimidated. That's what we have to do. That's our role in this. Now, if you found this episode informative, if you found it valuable, I encourage you to share it with your family and friends. Take 30 seconds to write a positive review on any podcast platform that allows it. Let people know what's happening. The media may not want to cover it. That doesn't mean that we can't. They don't want to talk about it. It doesn't mean that we can't talk about it and spread the truth ourselves. We have to put an end to this. Also, make sure that you follow and subscribe to the P.A.S. Report podcast so you don't miss future episodes. And don't forget, the America's Founding series launches this Thursday, and I'm very excited. Be sure to check it out. Let me know what you think. Send me an email, ngiordano@pasreport.com or podcast@pasreport.com. I want to thank you for joining me. I'll be back on Wednesday. I got a great guest coming on, so you're going to want to make sure that you tune it in right here to the P.A.S. Report podcast.
Thank you for listening to the P.A.S. Report. Don't forget to rate, share, and hit that subscribe button. That way you'll never miss an episode. For more exclusive content and updates, visit us at pasreport.com and follow Professor Giordano on all social media platforms at P.A.S. Report.